Shoot the breeze topic number 2 says a story on a clash of worldviews. Monica's story, the woman shipped from Ghana to Portugal in 1556 to stand trial for using traditional medicine interpreted as witchcraft by Eurasians. This came, let me see if my computer will allow me to share this on screen. It's actually an article, so I'm going to have to do some reading here. But this is from Kenya Star. Jacadero should be familiar. It says Monica's story, the woman shipped from Ghana to Portugal in 1556 is on trial for using traditional medicine. It says standing before the Inquisition in Lisbon, Portugal in 1556, Monica Fernandez, a woman from the coast of modern-day Ghana, was accused of casting malevolent spells and making pacts with demons. Her crime? Seeking a traditional Akan remedy for a simple cat bite. The Portuguese Inquisition was a powerful institution tasked with identifying, investigating, and punishing any belief or practice that deviated from official Catholic doctrine. The Inquisition was established in 1536 during the expansion of the Portuguese Empire, one of the world's first global maritime powers. Fernandez's trial, recorded in meticulous detail by the Inquisitor Geronimo de Azambuja, offers a rare and powerful window into a 16th century clash of cultures. It reveals how a colonial power systemically misunderstood and criminalized local customs, rebranding indigenous knowledge as dangerous sorcery. As a historian, I spent my time searching for connections between people across the early modern world, especially the lives of women and children within the vast Portuguese Empire. While I was researching the trials of indigenous women in colonial Brazil, a question began to form. Were women in other parts of the empire, like West Africa, also being targeted for their traditional knowledge? This question led me to the archives of the Portuguese Inquisition and to a remarkable case file from 1556. The file detailed the trial of Monica Fernandez, an Akan woman from what's now Ghana. Her story opens a rare window into the personal, human impact of colonization. It shows how a vast imperial power operated underground by misunderstanding, criminalizing, and attempting to erase indigenous ways of knowing. Recovering stories like this helps us understand a legacy of cultural suppression that continues to resonate today. Monica was born to Akan parents. The Akan are a collection of related peoples primarily living in modern-day Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Organized into matrilineal states, they had established sophisticated societies with rich cultural, religious, and social knowledge systems long before the arrival of Europeans. The Portuguese first arrived on the West African coast in the late 15th century, driven by a desire for gold. They established their authority by constructing fortified trading posts like Sao Jorge de Mina, now Elmina Castle, that imposed their laws and religion on the surrounding communities. Monica lived and worked in and around Sao Jorge de Mina, a place of intense cultural collision. Baptized into the Catholic faith, she existed between two worlds, the rigid, hierarchical society of the European fortress and the vibrant Akan village of Adina that surrounded it. Like others, she moved between these spaces to socialize, shop, and crucially seek medical care. It was this last activity that brought her to the attention of the Inquisition. Instead of visiting the Portuguese apothecary at the fortress, Monica consulted a local Akan healer on, what's that, Kempho or Adunsini to treat a cat bite. She procured an ointment, a common practice she saw as rudimentary healthcare. To the Inquisitor, however, this was proof of heterodoxy, or a belief, opinion, or practice that went against the officially established doctrines of Catholicism. Monica's choice to trust her community's medical expertise over that of the Portuguese was seen not as a rejection of European authority, but as evidence of a pact with the devil. The accusations against Monica were dramatic and personal. The initial charge stemmed from a quarrel with another African woman, Ana Fernandez, who was visiting Sao Jorge de Mina from Lisbon. Witnesses claimed that after an argument, Monica cast a spell on Ana. Weeks after returning to Portugal, Ana succumbed to a mysterious illness that allegedly caused the skin to peel from her face. This rumor, spread by a single witness, became the centerpiece of the case. The rumor of Monica's curse spread, prompting a formal inquiry by the Portuguese captain at Almina Castle. It was only after this local investigation, which took months, that Monica was officially detained and transported as a prisoner to face the main tribunal in Lisbon. The inquisitors' interest went beyond this single event, expanding to include other, more everyday practices. Witnesses interviewed at Almina Castle also claimed Monica conducted spells using chickens and yams. While these details were recorded as evidence of sinister rituals, they were in fact staple elements of Akan cultural life. Yams, a starchy edible tuber similar to a potato, were a vital food source and central to ceremonies honoring ancestors, while animal sacrifice was common preparation for deities. What the Portuguese inquisitors labeled witchcraft or charms was for Monica and her community simply medicine and custom. The trial documents painstakingly list her heterodoxical activities, but in doing so, they inadvertently preserve a record of the very cultural knowledge the Inquisition sought to destroy. Monica's case became a catalog of everyday Akan practices seen through a distorted colonial lens. Throughout months of imprisonment and interrogation, Monica was pressed to confess to witchcraft. She consistently refused, and in Akan culture, the concept of Bai, trigger happy, let me know if I pronounce that wrong, is sometimes translated as witchcraft, but it specifically refers to acts of acute spiritual wickedness or illness. Monica's actions did not fit this category. She was treating a physical ailment, a cat bite. Monica's refusal to accept the label of quote unquote witch was therefore not simple denial. Her defense was based on a clear cultural distinction, one she clung to despite her limited Portuguese, when she insisted that she had committed no crime because, quote, all the black men and women of Mina did it too. She was not admitting to collective guilt. She was trying to explain that her actions was customary medicine, not malevolent spiritual work. She understood the difference between her own system of knowledge and the crime of which she was accused, and she refused to conflate them. Ultimately, Monica was found guilty of witchcraft, but the inquisitors deemed her actions quote unquote minor. She was given the light sentence of a period of religious re education in Lisbon to study Christian doctrine. Monica secured her release by demonstrating good Christian behavior, but was forbidden from returning to her homeland. Monica's light sentence was relatively uncommon, but unlikely to have been the first instance of re education. It is possible that women from other Portuguese colonial territories also suffered similar fates, but many records have been lost due to the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 and the deliberate destruction of the Goa Inquisition cases, which also took in East Africa. We don't know what happened to her after her release, but her story, buried in the archives for over 450 years, remains deeply relevant. It is a powerful personal account of how colonialism operated, not just through military force, but through displacement and the deliberate suppression of local knowledge. Monica's trial is a stark reminder that the branding of indigenous practices His quote unquote magic or superstition was a tool used to assert dominance and erase entire ways of knowing the world. Goodness gracious, that was a. With that said, because someone's been knocking on the door, I don't know why. But with that said, let me start with Black Steel. Black Steel, what are your thoughts on Monica?
Oh, well, that story did not end the way I thought it was going to end. I thought she was going to be burned at the stake. Koku, you complain like my students when they have to read a passage. Readers are leaders, man. What can I say? Um, leaders, man. But this reminds me of another African woman who was accused of witchcraft in the famous Salem witch trials in 1692 in Massachusetts. There was a black woman named Tituba who came from, I believe she was of African descent, but she came from Barbados and or some Caribbean island, and she was accused by the little white girls who started the whole hubbub about witches of teaching them witchcraft and how they would deal with the devil and everything else like that. Um, African religions, African spirituality, any type of manifestation of our Africanness has always been treated as tantamount to being in league with the devil, right? They live in a black and white world, dichotomous world, right? You're either of God or you're not of God. Um, all other religions are evidence are just tricks by the devil to lead men astray. They would look at it like that. And then um, what happens is that when they encounter any belief that is not Christian, and then you can hear it today. If you ever talk to a devout Christian, they say it's the devil. Any religion that is not Christian, and some people go so far as to any religion that is not evangelical Christianity is seen as something that is of Satan, right? So it could be so much as herbs or pouring libations or anything that's a manifestation of any traditional spirituality, especially anything that comes from Africa, right? Because they want black people to lose all connection to their motherland, and that's why they kind of, you know, especially in places like Spain, Portugal, they really England, they had the whole Inquisition and the that was created to find out people who were heretics, people who were pretending to be Christian. After the Christians took back the Spain from the Muslims in 1492, they created an Inquisition to root out heresy, to find those people who converted but were really practicing their beliefs in secret. So that's what this black woman who was basically exiled from her home for making an ointment to cure her from an animal bite. You know, basically the equivalent of using Neosporin as we do it nowadays. She was exiled from her homeland, and it's unfortunate that they didn't take her life. And when we say these things, it's like we have to understand that these people have always been at war with our spiritual systems, our culture, our religion. Whenever it's never an attempt to understand it. It's never an attempt to coexist. One has to rule, the other has to dominate, stamp it out, demonize it to the point where we, as African people, demonize our own traditional spiritual beliefs. 95% of the African continent is either Muslim or Christian. So think about that. There's over a billion people in Africa, and of those billion people, 95 of them believe either Christianity or Islam, either one of the Abrahamic faiths. That's I don't think there's a ratio like that outside of maybe Native America. Many Native Americans, are Christian, but I don't think we see that outside of that. We don't see that type of ratio anywhere. There's not a large number of Christians in China. Japan has a population of Christians 1%, but for African people, they made sure to demonize our spirituality and the way we practice anything, how we relate to the spirit world, relate to the natural world. Anything can be seen as demonic or devilish. You even had black people in America saying they're glad their ancestors were enslaved because they weren't. They'd be worshiping trees. So I'll leave it there. But yes, I'm sorry. You know, you learn more every day. Uh, Somebody who's like myself who loves history, I hear these stories, and you know, it's just tragic, really, that this happened to her. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Appreciate that commentary, Black Steel. With that said, let me hear from Sister Cheryl. Cheryl, what say you?
Yeah, so yes, it just reminds me of like um, just how black people today react to when you tell them you're when you want to cure something or when you want to if someone has a cold or someone has a fever. Oh, you should go to the doctor. Do this and that. They don't. But when you try to counteract that and you say, well, we're not going to the doctor, we're going to do this, we're not going to take Tylenol, we're not going to do those the typical things that the West does, and they look at you like like you got a dick blowing out of your forehead or something. They look at you like you're crazy. Like, why would you not? So, for instance, with my son, why would you not take your son to the hospital? They see it as you being you're not being a good parent, and it just it's like in a lot of the times people who are against natural medicine and everything, they don't even have to be Christian per se, but they have Christian values. So what I mean is like they may not go to church, they may not practice the Bible or whatever, but the Christianity is so ingrained in them, in their values and everything that they do. It's like it just influences everything that they say and they do. And there's so many examples of this, even with how, like, and I keep going back to this, but even how COVID turned out. If you had somebody that said, oh well, I'm not taking the COVID shot, they all looked at you like you're crazy, because Western, they rely so heavily on Western medicine, but that the foundation for that is the Abrahamic religions. I don't think they would see it that way. You try to explain it to them, I don't think they would understand. But that's kind of what it is, and it's really sad and unfortunate because it's this type of system that where we're not relying on our traditional medicines and our natural, natural, everything that all the natural medicines and all the things that we do naturally. It's the reason why you have so many Westerners, um, passing early. You have a lot of them passing away. It's unheard of. I mean, it should be. I mean, like we're talking about, like, okay, I'm 36 and I'm about to be 36. I know at least I know a handful of people my age that are passing away from cancer, or they get cancer really early, and I'm like, this is unheard of. This should not be. But we don't think to get away from the things in America that may cause these cancers, like the nat. You don't. Anytime you hear natural, they're like, oh, the natural stuff. Oh, that's not good. I have a friend that did the natural stuff and it killed them. I'm like, that's such a bad faith argument because you don't know their medical history. You don't know what exactly they did. It's just so bad faith to say that something natural killed you, but all this Western medicine and Western food and the lack of exercise in this country. It's just crazy to think that you would think natural stuff is killing you, but all this other stuff is not. That's part of the Christ insanity that we're dealing with. So I mean, it's really deep, and it's unfortunately not much we can do. So
Appreciate that, Cheryl. Sister Raw's out in the chat. She says, them Caucasoids make you sick, and our people run to them for help, and the Caucasoids make them sicker. Very true statement. Uh, um, there's a good conversation going on between Trigger Happy and Afro Native World, so you guys listen to the playback, you tap into the chat. Oftentimes, there's good side conversations going on, so check those out. Thank you, Sister Show. With that said, let me hear from Buana next. Buana, what say you?
Yeah, for me, I personally just view this as getting rid of your competition. You know,
Buana, can you raise your volume a little bit?
sure, sure. Let me see if I can. Oh God.
Did Buana leave?
Can you hear me, Coco?
I can hear you. It's kind of low, but go ahead. Go ahead.
You said cut the volume up, not lower.
No. Let me go and come back in. I'll come back in, man.
Now we can hear you. Now we can hear you. Come on. We can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, this is a matter of competition. Okay, competition. The Church of Jesus Christ Incorporated, known as the Catholic Church, by vis-a-vis the Portuguese, was just simply trying to get rid of their competition. The church at that time, it was run completely by males, and the highest office in the Portuguese world was the Pope. You know, a white male from Italy. You know, and they are like usually like old men who can't have sex anymore. They feel very threatened by spiritual women in leadership offices. That's the first thing. That's the first thing. So they felt you feel like you have to get rid of your competition because you don't want your parishioners to ever get wind of some spiritual woman from Africa who possess the same so-called powers that you do. So you got to get rid of the competition. You know, the Catholic Church is notorious for doing that. You know, we're gonna scratch out any religion that is not Christian. Vis-a-vis, we're gonna perceive it as witchcraft and we'll burn you at the stake. This is what they did. The second thing is you gotta get rid of the medical competition. This lady is practicing traditional medicine. Now in Europe at the time, they had their own doctors. They had their own doctors who was pilfering and selling whatever they were selling in terms of medication. But this lady from Ghana, wherever she was from, had another view of practicing medicine. So now, if my medicine is more effective than your medicine, but I sell in my medicine for much less than, or if I selling it because I could be giving it away, then you provide your adherence to your medication. What am I gonna do? You know, I'm gonna try to get rid of my competition. So they feel threatened by it. We gotta get this out. We gotta stop this out, and we don't want this thing to flourish in the Western world. It's just a matter of getting rid of competition. The funny thing about it is if these same religious men was to come to 2025 right now, would they burn the scientists at the stake? Because if you really think about it, a lot of the pharmaceutical scientists, they go to the African continent because they have discovered a lot of the natural medicine could be synthesized into a pill form, and then they sell it back to the Western world for $1.99, you know, per pill. So it's just an interesting feature of history. It's just an interesting feature of history, but I think it has to do with a whole lot of misunderstanding. But like I say, it's competition, and the Catholic Church, Jesus Christ Incorporated, was trying to get rid of their competition. That's how I see this. But I'll leave it there just to be brief.
Yeah, appreciate that, Buana. Um, with that said, let's hear from Jacadera.
Yeah. First, to answer Afro World, no, I that wasn't that was Pan Mulattoism was not my guest. it was just ironic how a few weeks ago I asked for opposing ideologies to come on the show, and then we got one. So it's just ironic. With the story of this lady, this is something that has been happening, man, as far back as I can read. Uh, I think if I remember right, there was a story about how one of the Portuguese had like a I think it was like a rash or something. And what we know is that oftentimes back then in medieval Europe is that even for like the slightest rash, an amputation would likely occur. Well, I think they were enslaving peoples at that time from the western coast, and one of the enslaved peoples for some odd reason, because like you got to ask like yourself what what mindset, what exactly was going on. But instead of letting your captor die from like their rash, he decides to save him with medicinal herbal medicinals, and they thought the world of this guy, but also there was suspicion of who is this guy? Was this guy a bush doctor? I say this to say that, man, we got the best stuff, man. we got pun not intended, but we got the best dope. Africa's had the best dope, man. It's no surprise that uh, I think it was Dr. Africa, or maybe Dr. Sebi had said that, for every disease, there's the cure. The cure is here on earth for every single disease. And so it just, this story just affirms it. It just says that, what you got going for you, the moment that somebody, especially your enemy, tells you like what you got going on is demonic, and whatever it is that you're believing in, you shouldn't be doing that. Just know that you're on the good path. I don't have too much to say about it, but what an awesome story, at least from the perspective that we got the best dope, man. Shout out to Africans.
Appreciate that, Jacadero. I think I got everyone on that one, right? I think I got everyone. You guys check out the chat again. Trigger Happy drops a. Hold on a second. Yeah, Trigger Happy drops an article in the chat. You guys can check out as well. I think he said it's also a prompt. I guess is coming up in a bit. But is there any last thoughts on Shooter Breeze topic number 2 as far as
Only,
Monica's story?
only thing I would add is that the entire Western medicine apparatus is irredeemably racist, right? It is so many situations. There was a story in the news not too long ago where this black man was literally having a stroke, and the police took him to jail instead of the hospital and let him die in there. You hear so many stories about black women dying in childbirth, black people being misdiagnosed, black people seeking help and then being ignored and told they're faking it, or they told that their symptoms aren't real, and they take them. The people have died because they refuse to treat them, right? So whenever we hear about this woman's story, fast forward 500 years or so, we have to understand that this is ultimately what they wanted to do, was replace the system of healing with the system of death, right? They wanted black people to be at their beck and call and to be able to have to depend on them for any type of sustenance. So it's just very, even now you see how the medical apparatus works against African people.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Shout out to Musings and Marcus Garvey is the way in the chat earlier when we had the interruption. I didn't get a chance to address them. So shout out to them as well. Let's go to Shooter Breeze topic number 3 for time's sake.